My name is Beatrice, and I am 62 years old. I was sitting in a lawyer's office for the reading of my late husband's will when his son from his first marriage stood up and shouted at the top of his lungs, "If that shrew gets a share, I will give up mine." He was pointing right at me. I stayed silent. I smiled. He had no idea the fortune was worth $11 million, and he had no idea what he had just done to himself. Before I tell you how this greedy son destroyed his own future with one sentence, let me know where you are watching from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey. What happened next in that room changed everything, and I think you will want to hear every detail. To understand how I ended up in that lawyer's office, I need to take you back to where my story really began. I grew up in a small town in Nebraska. My parents were farmers, simple people who worked the land with their bare hands. We did not have much, but we had love. That was enough for me back then. I thought love would always be enough. When I was 22 years old, I met Marcus during my senior year of college. He was studying law, ambitious and charming. He had this way of making me feel like I was the center of his universe. We got married right after graduation, and I truly believed we would be together forever. The first few years were good. We had a daughter named Sophie, and she became my whole world. Marcus started climbing the ladder at his law firm, working longer hours, taking on bigger cases. I supported him through every late night, every missed dinner, every forgotten anniversary. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself he was building our future. But somewhere along the way, Marcus changed. Or maybe he just finally showed me who he really was. When Sophie was 7 years old, I found out Marcus had been having an affair with a colleague at his firm. It had been going on for 2 years. 2 years of lies, of looking me in the eyes and pretending everything was fine. The divorce was brutal. Marcus had connections, powerful friends in the legal community. He made sure I got almost nothing. No alimony, minimal child support that he often forgot to pay. I was 30 years old alone with a little girl to raise, and I had to start my life over from scratch. I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. During the day, I worked as an accountant at a small firm. At night, I tutored high school students in math. Sleep became a luxury I could not afford. But every time I looked at Sophie, I found the strength to keep going. We lived in a tiny apartment with thin walls and a leaky faucet that I could never afford to fix. Sophie shared a bedroom with me until she was 12. She never complained, not once. That girl had more grace in her little finger than Marcus had in his entire body. I made a promise to myself during those hard years. I would never speak badly about Marcus in front of Sophie. She deserved to form her own opinions about her father. As it turned out, she did not need my help. Marcus barely showed up for birthdays, missed most of her school events, and eventually stopped calling altogether. Sophie figured out on her own what kind of man he was. Despite everything, Sophie thrived. She was smart, hardworking, and kind. She got a scholarship to nursing school and graduated at the top of her class. When she walked across that stage to get her diploma, I cried harder than I had ever cried in my life. Not from sadness, but from pure pride. By the time I was 45, Sophie had married a wonderful man named David, and they had 2 beautiful children. I was a grandmother, and it was the greatest joy I had ever known. My life was not glamorous. I still worked at the same accounting firm, still lived modestly, but I had my daughter, my grandchildren, and my peace. I had stopped believing in romantic love a long time ago. I figured that part of my life was over. Then one autumn afternoon, everything changed. I was sitting on a bench in the park near my apartment reading a novel I had borrowed from the library. The leaves were turning gold and red, and there was a crispness in the air that I have always loved about fall. A man sat down on the bench next to me. He was older, maybe late 60s, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He asked me what I was reading. It was such a simple question, but the way he asked it with genuine curiosity and a warm smile made me want to answer. We ended up talking for 2 hours. His name was Harold, and he was 68 years old. His wife had passed away 10 years earlier from cancer, and he had never remarried. He told me he had owned a chain of auto parts stores in Texas, but had sold the business and was now retired traveling and trying to find meaning in his later years. There was something about Harold that felt safe. He did not try to impress me with stories of his success. He asked about my life, my daughter, my grandchildren. He listened, like every word I said mattered. Before we parted ways, we exchanged phone numbers. I did not expect him to call. Men like him, successful and worldly, did not pursue women like me. Or so I thought. Harold called the next day, and the day after that. Soon we were talking for hours every evening. He flew from Texas to visit me every month, always bringing small, thoughtful gifts. A first edition of my favorite book, a scarf in the exact shade of blue I had mentioned loving, homemade cookies from a bakery in his hometown because I told him I had a sweet tooth. Sophie met Harold after we had been seeing each other for 3 months. I was nervous about introducing them, worried that Sophie might think I was being foolish, a woman my age falling in love again. But Sophie surprised me. "Mom," she said after Harold left that first visit, "he looks at you like you are the most precious thing in the world. I have never seen anyone look at you that way." That was when I knew I was not imagining things. What Harold and I had was real. After a year of long-distance dating, Harold proposed. He got down on one knee in that same park where we first met, right there on our bench. I said yes without hesitation. For the first time in over 2 decades, I allowed myself to believe in second chances. Harold had told me about his son Derek early in our relationship. He spoke of him with a mixture of love and resignation that I did not fully understand at the time. Derek was 42 years old, Harold's only child from his first marriage. He lived in Houston and had worked at his father's company before Harold sold it. When the new owners kept Derek on as a manager, Harold seemed relieved. "At least my son has a job," he said. "At least he has something." I did not know what Harold meant by that until I met Derek myself. Harold arranged a dinner so I could meet his son before the wedding. Derek arrived 30 minutes late to the restaurant without so much as an apology. He was a tall man with his father's build, but none of his warmth. His eyes were cold, calculating, sizing me up the moment he walked through the door. "So this is the woman you are marrying, Dad." He said it like a statement, not a question. His tone made it clear he was not impressed. I extended my hand and introduced myself, trying to be friendly. Derek barely touched my fingers before dropping them like I was something unpleasant. Throughout dinner, Derek made little effort to include me in the conversation. He talked about himself, his job, his house, his cars. When he did acknowledge me, it was with thinly veiled condescension. He asked what I did for a living, and when I told him I was an accountant, he smirked. "How practical," he said. The way he said it made practical sound like an insult. But the worst part was how Derek kept bringing up his mother. "My mom would have hated this restaurant," he said at one point, loud enough for me to hear. She had such refined taste. Harold tried to steer the conversation to neutral topics, but Derek was relentless. By the end of the meal, I had a clear picture of who Derek was. A man who believed the world owed him something. A man who saw me as a threat to whatever he thought he was entitled to. Derek's wife, Christina, was no better. She came from old money, and she wore her privilege like a designer handbag. When we met at a family gathering a few weeks later, she looked at my off-the-rack dress with barely concealed disdain. "So, Beatrice," she said, drawing out my name like it tasted bad, "what do you do again?" When I repeated that I was an accountant, she let out a little laugh. Oh, how nice. I could never do something so tedious. Their children, Tyler and Madison, were exactly what you would expect from parents like Derek and Christina. Tyler was 15 and did not bother to look up from his phone when introduced to me. Madison, 12 years old, wrinkled her nose and asked her grandfather if I was going to live with them. When Harold explained I would be his wife and their new grandmother, she rolled her eyes. "I do not need another grandma," she announced. "I already have Grandma Christina's mom." Harold apologized to me after that first meeting with his family. He was embarrassed by their behavior, and I could see the pain in his eyes. He loved his son despite everything the way parents do, with a hope that never quite dies, no matter how many times it gets crushed. I told Harold it was fine. I told him I understood. And I meant it. I was not marrying Harold for his family. I was marrying him for him. Our wedding was small and intimate, exactly what I wanted. Sophie served as my maid of honor, beaming with happiness for me. Her children, my grandchildren, were the flower girl and ring bearer. It was perfect. Derek and Christina attended, but their presence cast a shadow. Derek did not congratulate his father. He pulled him aside at one point and said loud enough for me to overhear, "I hope you know what you are doing." Christina did not speak a single word to me the entire reception. The children sat in a corner, bored and disinterested. As Harold and I drove away from the venue, I looked in the rearview mirror at Derek standing with his arms crossed watching us go. I had a feeling that this was only the beginning of our troubles with him. After the wedding, I started hearing things, whispers that made their way back to me through mutual acquaintances. Derek had been telling people I was a gold digger. Christina spread rumors that I had targeted Harold for his money, that I was nothing but a scheming opportunist. It hurt. I will not pretend it did not. I had spent my whole life being honest, working hard, never taking anything I did not earn. To be painted as some kind of fortune hunter was deeply painful. But I did not tell Harold. He loved his son, and I did not want to be the reason their relationship fell apart. I swallowed my pride and hoped that time would change things. I hoped Derek would eventually see that I loved his father for who he was, not what he had. I was wrong. I moved to Texas to live with Harold after our wedding. He had a beautiful house much larger than anything I had ever lived in. But the size of the house did not matter to me. What mattered was being with Harold, building a life together in whatever time we had left. I kept my habits simple. I cooked our meals myself, finding joy in preparing Harold's favorite dishes. I cleaned the house, tended to the garden, did our laundry. When Harold suggested hiring help, I declined. I enjoy taking care of you, I told him. It makes me happy. Harold looked at me with such tenderness when I said that. I think it surprised him. His first wife had come from wealth, accustomed to staff and luxury. I came from a Nebraska farm where you did things yourself and were grateful for what you had. Those early years of our marriage were some of the happiest of my life. Harold and I traveled together, exploring places I had only read about in books. We read side by side in the evenings, discussing literature and philosophy. We worked in the garden, getting dirt under our fingernails and laughing at ourselves. Harold said I had given him a reason to live again. I told him he had given me something I thought I had lost forever: hope. Sophie visited, often bringing her husband and the children. Harold adored them. He became the grandfather they deserved, patient and loving, always with a story to tell or a game to play. He set up college funds for both kids without me even asking. When I protested that it was too generous, he waved me off. "They are your grandchildren," he said. "That makes them my grandchildren, too." Derek, on the other hand, only appeared when he wanted something. He would show up unannounced, always with some excuse about being in the area. But within minutes, the real reason for his visit would become clear. He needed money. There was always something. A business opportunity he could not pass up. Medical bills. A vacation he and Christina just had to take. The kids' private school tuition. Harold gave him money every time. Tens of thousands of dollars over the years, loans that Derek never repaid and never intended to. Harold knew his son was using him. I could see it in his eyes. But he could not say no. Derek was his only child, his flesh and blood. I gently raised my concerns once after Derek had come asking for $50,000 to invest in some scheme that sounded suspicious. "Harold," I said carefully, "I worry that Derek does not appreciate what you give him. He never seems grateful and he never pays you back." Harold sighed. "He is my son, Beatrice. What can I do? I made mistakes when he was young. After his mother died, I threw money at him instead of giving him my time. I created this. How can I abandon him now?" I did not push further. It was not my place to tell Harold how to handle his relationship with his son, but I saw the pattern clearly. Derek viewed his father as nothing more than a source of income, and Christina was even worse, always hinting about expensive things she wanted, always mentioning renovations or purchases, just within Harold's earshot. The Christmas of our third year together was when things came to a head. Harold hosted a holiday dinner and invited both families. Sophie and her crew arrived with homemade gifts and warm hugs. Derek and Christina came empty-handed, their children glued to their devices and barely acknowledging anyone. During dinner, Christina brought up the subject I had been dreading. "So, Harold," she said with false casualness, "have you updated your will lately? I mean, with the new marriage and all, I imagine things have changed." The table went silent. Sophie shot me a look of disbelief. Harold set down his fork, his expression hardening. "My will is my business, Christina. This is not the time or place." But Derek was not about to let it go. "Yeah, Dad, you should make sure everything is fair." His eyes flicked to me, full of accusation. We would not want anyone taking advantage. I felt my cheeks burn, but kept my composure. Sophie started to say something in my defense, but I put my hand on her arm. It was not worth it. Harold ended the dinner early that night. After Derek and Christina left, he held me and apologized over and over. I told him it was not his fault, but something had shifted. Harold had seen exactly how his son and daughter-in-law viewed us, and I do not think he ever forgot it. The following year, Harold was diagnosed with prostate cancer, stage 3. The doctor said treatment might help, but they could not promise anything. I felt the ground disappear beneath my feet when we got the news. Harold had become my everything. The thought of losing him was unbearable. I threw myself into caring for him. I drove him to every chemotherapy appointment, held his hand through the nausea and exhaustion, stayed up with him during the sleepless nights. I researched treatments, cooked nutritious meals, read to him when he was too weak to hold a book himself. Derek knew his father was sick, but he rarely visited. He would call occasionally, ask how Harold was doing, in a voice that sounded like he was checking items off a list, and then make excuses about why he could not come see him. Too busy, too far, too much going on. Christina never came at all. I did not have time to be angry. I was too focused on Harold, on making whatever time he had left as comfortable as possible. Sophie helped when she could, driving down on weekends, bringing food and flowers and her beautiful spirit, but mostly it was just Harold and me fighting this battle together. The cancer spread faster than the doctors expected. Within 6 months, Harold could no longer walk. He spent his days in a hospital bed we had set up in the living room, looking out at the garden we had planted together. I hired a nurse to help with the medical aspects, but I remained his primary caregiver. I bathed him, changed his clothes, held his hand through the pain. It was exhausting and heartbreaking, and I would not have traded a single moment of it. One afternoon, as I was adjusting his pillows, Harold grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "I am so sorry, Bee. I am so sorry you have to do this." I blinked back tears. "There is nowhere else I would rather be, Harold. I mean that." He was quiet for a moment, then spoke again. "I made so many mistakes with Derek. After his mother died, I did not know how to be a father and a mother at the same time. I thought if I gave him enough money, enough things, it would make up for my absence. I was wrong. I created a monster, and now you are the one who suffers for it." I squeezed his hand. "You cannot blame yourself for who Derek chose to become. He is a grown man. He makes his own choices." Harold shook his head slowly. "When you have a child, Beatrice, you never stop hoping they will become better. You never stop believing that somewhere inside them is the person you raised them to be. I kept waiting for Derek to grow up to become the man I knew he could be. I am still waiting." Those words haunted me. I saw the pain in Harold's eyes, the disappointment, the lingering hope that his son would show up, would finally be there when it mattered. But Derek never came. Not when his father was dying. Not when every day could have been the last. About a week before the end, Derek finally made an appearance. But it was not to comfort his father. He brought his lawyer. They sat down in the living room, and Derek got straight to the point. "Dad, I think we need to discuss your will. I want to see what you have planned." Harold was weak, his voice barely above a whisper, but there was steel in his words. "My will is with my attorney. You will learn the contents when the time comes." Derek's face reddened. "I am your son. I have a right to know. You will inherit what you deserve, Derek. That is all I will say." Derek stood up abruptly, knocking over a glass of water on the side table. He did not bother to clean it up. Instead, he turned to me, eyes blazing with hatred. "This is your doing, is it not? You have been poisoning him against me since the day you married him." I did not respond. I had learned long ago that engaging with Derek only made things worse. But Harold found the strength to defend me one last time. "Leave her alone." His voice cracked, but his meaning was clear. "Get out of my house, Derek. Now." Derek stormed out, slamming the door so hard the pictures on the wall shook. I heard his car peel out of the driveway, tires screeching. Harold was shaking, tears streaming down his face. I held him until he calmed down, stroking his hair, whispering that it was okay that I was there, that I was not going anywhere. That night, Harold asked to talk to me about the will. He was exhausted from the confrontation, but he wanted me to understand. "The estate is worth about $11 million, he said quietly. "That includes the house investment, stocks, cash. I have left you the majority of it, B. You have earned it. You have taken care of me when no one else would." I started to protest, but he held up his hand. "Derek will receive $200,000, but only if he proves he can manage money responsibly for 5 years. If he cannot, his share goes to charity. I have also left $150,000 for Sophie's children for their education." "Harold, that is incredibly generous." He smiled weakly. "Sophie has been more of a family to me than my own son. Her children are bright and kind, just like their grandmother. They deserve it. Then he told me something else. Derek does not know the real value of the estate. He thinks it is around $2 million. He never bothered to ask, and I never corrected him. He assumed I spent most of it over the years. Why did you let him believe that? Because B, if he knew the truth, he would have torn this family apart trying to get his hands on it. This way, at least, you will have some peace after I am gone. I did not know what to say. Harold had been protecting me, even as he lay dying. He squeezed my hand one last time. Promise me you will take care of yourself. Promise me you will live fully. That is all I want for you. I promised. 1 week later, on a quiet night in March, Harold passed away in his sleep. I was lying next to him holding his hand just as I had every night since he got sick. When I realized he was gone, I did not scream or cry out. I just lay there feeling the warmth slowly leave his body, thanking him silently for the 5 most beautiful years of my life. Sophie arrived within the hour. She held me as I finally let myself break down, sobbing into her shoulder, feeling the weight of loss crushing my chest. But even in my grief, I knew the hardest part was still ahead, the reading of the will. 2 weeks after the funeral, I received a call from Harold's attorney, a man named Patterson who had known my husband for over 30 years. He informed me that the reading of the will would take place at his office the following Monday. All beneficiaries had been notified, including Derek. I dreaded that meeting, not because I did not know what was in the will. Harold had told me everything. I dreaded it because I knew how Derek would react. I knew there would be a scene. Sophie insisted on coming with me. I need to be there for you, Mom, she said. I am not letting you face that snake alone. On the morning of the reading, I dressed simply. A black dress, no jewelry except for my wedding ring. I was not there to impress anyone. I was there to fulfill Harold's final wishes and then move on with my life. Sophie drove us to the attorney's office. My hands were trembling and I could not eat breakfast. Every nerve in my body was on edge. When we arrived, Derek and Christina were already there. Derek was wearing an expensive suit, his hair slicked back, looking like he was attending a business meeting rather than his father's will reading. Christina was dripping in designer labels and jewelry, her face set in that permanent expression of superiority I had come to know so well. Derek did not greet us. He barely looked up when we walked in. Christina examined her manicure with studied disinterest. Mr. Patterson came out to escort us into the conference room. We took our seats around a large mahogany table. Sophie sat on my right, Derek and Christina across from us. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. I hope this will be quick, Derek said impatiently. I have things to do. Mr. Patterson ignored the comment and began the proceedings. He opened with the standard legal language, then moved on to Harold's personal statement. It was a beautiful letter expressing love for his family and gratitude for the life he had lived. Harold thanked me specifically for the happiness I had brought to his final years. I saw Derek's jaw tighten at those words. Then came the bequests. First, Mr. Patterson read the portion for Sophie's children, $150,000 to be placed in educational trust funds for her grandchildren. Sophie gasped. I had told her about the bequest, but hearing it officially still moved her. She whispered a thank you to the heir to Harold wherever he was. Derek shifted in his seat, waiting for his turn. Mr. Patterson continued. To my son Derek, I leave the sum of $200,000. Derek sat up straighter, a small smile forming on his lips. But Mr. Patterson was not finished. This bequest is conditional. Derek must demonstrate responsible financial management for a period of 5 years, as determined by my attorney. If he fails to meet this condition, the funds will be donated to the Children's Hospital of Houston in my name. Derek's smile vanished. 200,000. His voice was incredulous. That is it. Christina grabbed his arm, whispering urgently. There has to be more. Derek continued, his voice rising. Where is the rest? My father was worth millions. Mr. Patterson remained calm. The remainder of the estate has been left to Mrs. Beatrice, your father's wife. Derek exploded out of his chair, his face contorted with rage. That shrew. She gets everything. I sat perfectly still, my hands folded in my lap. She married my father for his money, Derek shouted. Everyone knows it. She is nothing but a gold-digging opportunist who preyed on a lonely old man. Sophie jumped to her feet. Do not you dare speak about my mother that way. She took care of your father when you could not be bothered to visit. She was there every single day while you were too busy counting your future inheritance. Derek pointed a finger at Sophie. Stay out of this. This is family business. My mother is more family than you have ever been." Sophie shot back. Derek turned to Patterson, his face red with fury. "I will contest this will. This is undue influence. She manipulated him when he was sick and vulnerable." Mr. Patterson shook his head. Mr. Harold anticipated that response. "The will has been thoroughly documented, witnessed by medical professionals who confirmed your father was of sound mind and prepared with extensive legal safeguards. You are welcome to contest it, but I advise you that such an effort would be both expensive and ultimately unsuccessful." Derek was shaking with anger. He slammed his fist on the table. "If that shrew gets a single penny, I will give up my share," he shouted. "I mean it. I would rather have nothing than let her win." Christina grabbed his arm harder. "Derek, think about what you are saying." But Derek was beyond reason. "I do not care. I will not accept anything from a will that gives everything to that woman." The room went silent. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. "Mr. Derek, if that is your decision, I will note it in the record. You are voluntarily relinquishing your inheritance." Derek froze. "What do you mean, note it?" "I mean exactly what I said. You have stated in front of witnesses that you are giving up your share." Derek sputtered. "I was making a point. I did not literally mean—" "You were quite clear," Mr. Patterson said evenly. "And I should inform you, since it seems relevant now, that your father's estate is valued at approximately $11 million. The color drained from Derek's face. $11 million from... Christina looked like she might faint. $11 million. Your father was a very private man about his finances," Mr. Patterson continued. "He did not advertise his wealth." Derek turned to me, and I saw something shift in his eyes. Horror. Realization. Regret. "You knew," he whispered. "You knew the whole time, and you let me—" I finally spoke. "You made your choice, Derek." I did not say a word. And it was true. I had sat there silently through his entire tirade. I had not defended myself, had not corrected him, had not warned him about the true value of what he was throwing away. I had simply let him be exactly who he was. Derek collapsed back into his chair, his face white as paper. $200,000. He had just forfeited $200,000 because he could not control his hatred for me for 5 minutes. Christina stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I need some air," she muttered, and walked out without looking at her husband. Mr. Patterson gathered his papers. "I believe we are concluded here. Mrs. Beatrice, please schedule a follow-up appointment with my secretary to discuss the transfer of assets. Mr. Derek, I wish you well." Sophie took my arm and helped me stand. My legs were shaky, but I felt something I had not expected to feel. Relief. It was over. The aftermath of the will reading was predictably chaotic. Derek called Mr. Patterson's office repeatedly over the following weeks, demanding to retract his statement. He claimed he had been emotional, that he had not meant what he said, that it was not fair. Mr. Patterson was unmoved. Derek's words had been spoken clearly in front of multiple witnesses. The statement stood. He had voluntarily forfeited his inheritance. Derek tried calling me next. He left voicemails that started apologetic and quickly turned accusatory. He blamed me for setting him up for staying silent when I could have warned him. He called me manipulative, calculating evil. I deleted every message without responding. Christina, it turned out, was far less forgiving than I was. Within months of the will reading, she filed for divorce. The marriage had been held together by shared greed, and once the prospect of millions evaporated, there was nothing left. Their house was sold to cover debts I had not even known they had. Tyler and Madison went to live with their mother. I heard through acquaintances that Derek spiraled after the divorce. He lost his job when the company downsized. He moved to another state, cut off from everyone who had once been in his orbit. Part of me felt a twinge of something. Not quite pity, but maybe the echo of it. Derek had every opportunity in life. He had a father who loved him, who supported him financially and emotionally despite everything. He had education connections, privilege, and he threw it all away because he could not stand to see someone else receive something he felt was rightfully his. But I did not dwell on Derek's misfortune. I had my own life to live. I used Harold's money wisely, the way he would have wanted. I kept our house in Texas. Every room held memories of our time together, and I was not ready to let that go. But I also bought a small cottage near Sophie, close enough to see my grandchildren whenever I wanted. The first thing I did with the inheritance was establish the Harold Foundation. It was a charitable organization dedicated to helping underprivileged children access education. In its first year, we funded scholarships for over 50 students. By the fifth year, that number had grown to more than 300. Every time I signed a check, I thought of Harold. I thought of how he would have smiled. I traveled to all the places Harold and I had dreamed of visiting together. I carried a small portion of his ashes with me, scattering a little at each destination. The coast of Maine, where he had always wanted to see the lighthouses. The vineyards of Napa Valley, where we had planned to celebrate our 10th anniversary. The quiet beaches of the Outer Banks, where he had spent summers as a child. It was bittersweet, those trips. I missed him terribly. But I also felt him with me, in the warmth of the sun on my face, in the crash of waves against the shore, in the unexpected kindness of strangers. Harold had asked me to live fully, and I was keeping my promise. A year after Harold's death, Mr. Patterson called me with news. He had found a letter in Harold's files with instructions to deliver it to me 1 year after his passing. I opened it with trembling hands. "My dearest Beatrice," it began. "If you are reading this, it means I have been gone for a year. I hope you are taking care of yourself. I hope you are finding joy in the days even without me there to share them. I want you to know why I left things the way I did. It was not about punishing Derek, though I know it may seem that way. It was about protecting you. I saw how he treated you from the very beginning, the contempt, the cruelty, the rumors he spread. I saw it all, even when you tried to shield me from it. You never complained. You never asked me to choose between you and my son. You simply loved me quietly and completely, and let me figure things out for myself. That kind of grace is rare, Bea. It is precious. I knew Derek would react badly to the will. I knew he would say something unforgivable, and I knew you would stay silent because that is who you are. You do not engage in petty battles. You trust that the truth will reveal itself. And it did. Derek showed everyone exactly who he is. He always had a choice. He could have accepted his portion gracefully. He could have treated you with respect. Instead, he chose hatred. He chose greed. And in doing so, he chose his own punishment. You did nothing wrong by staying silent. You simply allowed him to be himself. Live your life, my love. Travel. Laugh. Spoil those beautiful grandchildren. Fall in love again if your heart leads you there. Do not waste a single day on regret or bitterness. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. I will love you forever. Yours always, Harold. I read that letter so many times the paper grew soft at the folds. I kept it in my nightstand next to a photograph of Harold and me from our wedding day. Some nights I would take it out and read it again just to feel close to him. Harold had understood me better than anyone. He knew I would not warn Derek. He knew I would not stoop to petty revenge. And he had set things up so that Derek's own nature would be his undoing. It was not cruelty. It was clarity. Harold had finally stopped hoping Derek would change and started accepting who his son really was. Now I am 62 years old and 5 years have passed since that day in the lawyer's office. Sophie is doing beautifully. She is still a nurse, still helping people, still the kindest soul I have ever known. Her children are growing up smart and compassionate. My grandson is in high school now, already talking about becoming a doctor. My granddaughter wants to be a teacher. They visit me every weekend, filling my house with laughter and energy. The Harold Foundation has become my life's work. Last month, we celebrated our 300th scholarship recipient, a young woman from rural Texas who will be the first in her family to attend college. When she thanked me at the ceremony, tears streaming down her face, I thought of Harold. I thought of how proud he would be. I heard about Derek recently through a mutual acquaintance who ran into him at a grocery store in another state. He is working a regular job now, nothing prestigious, living alone in a small apartment. Tyler and Madison have grown up and have little contact with their father. Christina remarried someone with money, of course. I do not know if Derek ever thinks about that day in the lawyer's office. I do not know if he regrets the words that cost him everything. Maybe he has learned from his mistakes. Maybe he has not. It is not my concern anymore. What I do know is this. Derek's hatred for me consumed him. It ate away at his judgment, his relationships, his future. He was so focused on making sure I did not win that he destroyed himself in the process. There is a lesson in that, I think. A lesson about what happens when we let bitterness take root in our hearts. Derek had every reason to be happy. He had a father who loved him, a family, financial security, but it was never enough. He always wanted more, and he resented anyone who had anything he did not. That kind of envy is poison. It kills you slowly from the inside out. I could have become bitter too, after everything Derek put me through, the insults, the rumors, the attempts to cut me out of Harold's life. I had plenty of reasons to hate him, but I chose not to. I chose to focus on what I had not, what others tried to take from me. Harold taught me that. He showed me that the best revenge is not revenge at all. It is simply living well. And I have lived well. I have loved deeply. I have given generously. I have built something meaningful with the resources Harold entrusted to me. That is my victory. Not the money. Not watching Derek fail. My victory is the peace I have found within myself. My victory is knowing that I honored Harold's memory every single day since he left. Some people might think I was wrong to stay silent during the will reading. They might say I should have warned Derek, should have given him a chance to take back his words before it was too late. But here is the truth. Derek had years to show who he really was. He had countless opportunities to treat me with basic decency, to show up for his father when it mattered to be a good son. He chose differently every single time. When he stood up in that lawyer's office and called me a shrew, when he declared that he would rather have nothing than let me receive a penny, he was just being himself. He was showing the world the person he had always been. I did not make Derek say those words. I did not force him to forfeit his inheritance. I simply sat there and let him reveal his true character. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any words ever could. Harold used to say that people show you who they really are when money is involved. Derek showed us exactly who he was. And in the end, he received exactly what he deserved, the consequences of his own choices. I think about Harold every day. I talk to his photograph each morning, telling him about my plans, my worries, my joys. I feel his presence in the garden we planted, in the books we read together, in the foundation that bears his name. I never remarried. I never wanted to. Harold was my great love, my second chance, my proof that happiness can find you at any age if you are open to it. I have my memories, my family, my purpose. That is more than enough. If you have stayed with me through this entire story, I want you to know something. It is never too late to find love. It is never too late to start over. And it is never too late to choose who you want to be. Derek chose bitterness. I chose peace. And peace, I have learned, is worth more than $11 million could ever buy. I wonder sometimes if Derek ever truly understands what happened in that room. I wonder if he realizes that his hatred for me cost him far more than any inheritance ever could. But then again, some lessons are simply too expensive for some people to learn. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever witnessed someone destroy their own future because they could not let go of their resentment? Have you ever had to stay silent while someone showed the world exactly who they were? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story touched you, please give it a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss any of my upcoming stories. Your support means everything to me. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I am sending you peace, love, and the courage to choose kindness even when the world makes it hard. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. And remember, the best revenge is not revenge at all. It is simply living a life so full of love that there is no room left for hate.